Good morning, children. I hope you have seen the previous video of the early Vedic civilization where I have covered what their settlement. They settled nearby Sapta Sindhu region. You have to, before referring to this video, you need to be aware about what was a society that early Vedic age comprises of, and which source we found in early Vedic society was the Rig Veda. It was one of the oldest Vedas, right? And this Veda, tells us the information about various sources, about the orders, about the economy, about the society of the Aryans. And if you see the early Vedic Aryans, they were the nature worshippers, and they were simple living people, right? Joint family system has been existed. The position of women was really good, and plus class, they were dependent on agriculture and cattle rearing. Clear, everyone? Now, and they considered the cows and the cattles. Clear? The persons who considered as the wealthiest persons has possessed the cows. Clear, everyone? And the bulls. Now, this video covers the later Vedic society. Now, later Vedic society, obviously, again we are going to read about their settlement, what happened, their features and everything. Clear? So let's start now. Now the later Vedic age. Now later Vedic age shows the very first of all, don't get confused. In the early Vedic age, it was a simple economy. There was not at all round development of the Aryans, right? The Aryans were simple living people. They were only confined to their villages, right? Their trade transactions was also very simple. But in later Vedic age, you see an all round development among the Aryans, right? And plus you are seeing other Vedas as well that has been existed in this period, right? The Yajur Ved, Atharva Ved and Sama Ved. The other three Vedas has been originated in later Vedic society, along with the Rig Veda, which was originated in the early Vedic age. Clear? Now each literature considered of two parts, Samhita and Brahmana. Now they have divided Veda into two parts now, Samhita and Brahmana. Now what was Samhita? The Samhita comprised of hymns and prayers to be sung at rituals. Basically, when they perform any sacrifice or rituals, they sung Samhita. Right? And Brahmanas are prose texts that explain in detail the meaning of hymns. The hymns which are there in Samhita. Now the Brahmana was, explained that hymns which was mentioned in Samhita. I hope people have understood what was the Samhita and Brahmana. Now next, they have although, in later Vedic age, they also, have Aryankas. Aryankas means text on the forest. They used to narrate many things related to the forest. Clear? The Upanishads, the philosophical thoughts of learned sages on soul, gods and ultimate truth or reality. So basically they have, they simply have Upanishads also, and Upanishads were the source, were the learned thoughts of the learned sages or rishis that was there in Upanishads, that were written in Upanishads, right? On soul, God and the ultimate truth, and that was the reality. Clear? So I hope so everyone has understood what kind of sources we got, what the literary sources. Under literary sources, we have got what? The three Vedas, Yajur Ved, Atharva Ved and Sama Ved, along with the Rig Veda, right? And here the Rig Veda, here the Veda was comprised of Samhita and the Brahmana. Now the Samhita means the hymns, and Brahmana means the explanation of that hymns or the prose text. Then another literary text was we found in later Vedic age was Aryankas, or the forest text. The text was written on the forest. Plus we found Upanishads. Upanishads were discourses of the sages or the saints or the rishis, right? Let's move on to the next slide now. Now sources reconstruct the later Vedic age. Now we have more sources as well, along with three Vedas. Again I repeat, Sama Ved, Yajur Ved and Atharva Ved. Clear? Then we have Vedas divided into Samhita and Brahmana. Then we have Upanishads. Then we have Aryankas. Along with all these sources, we have Smritis and epics. Smritis, they memorizes, right? The two great epics found during this, this civilization, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, right? Next we have archaeological sources as well, right? Archaeological sources means the sources which you can see. This is the literary sources. These are all books, right? Here archaeological sources, the buildings, the institutions which you can see. And what? The axes. We found the axes made of iron. Then that means they were familiar with the iron. This society was familiar with the iron, not like the early Vedic age, and they didn't know the use of iron. Clear? But this society was familiar with the use of iron. Now they were familiar with four types of pottery, right? Four types of pottery has been existed in this society: black and red ware, black sieved ware, painted grey ware and red ware. So all these four types of pottery has been existed. So there has been, they did the experimentations in pottery as well. Clear? That's why this age considered to be an all-round developed age. Clear? Fine. Now spread to many new regions. Now come to their settlement. Which areas they settled? They simply see earlier in early Vedic society we read about the Sapt Sindhu regions where they settled that area. Right? They simply settled nearby Sapt Sindhu region. So here, which new regions they were spreaded? Obviously, in the later Vedic age, they started developing themselves. They started moving further. They started scattering themselves. They started establishing themselves to many different regions. Now, which regions now? Let's see now. The land of Kurus, modern Delhi. They established their bases here. Then Kosala, Kashi, Videha, Magadha, Vangas, the Andhras mentioned Yatriya Brahmana, and plus their establishment we found in Andhra, in the part of India. Andhra part. Andhra means southern part of India. Clear? And where we found they simply settled in southern part of India through Yatriya Brahmana. Brahmana, everyone knows the explain the meaning of hymns. The Brahmana, there were different types of Brahmana. So we have Yatriya Brahmana mentioned about the Andhras. Clear? Andhras means southern Indians. Next we have whole of India. They established their settlement to whole of India to the north of Narmada and some regions to the south. So this was their settlement or the establishment, rather say. Clear? Now role of iron. Now basically they know the use of iron. Now if you see, if you compare iron with their development age, so it is very easy. You compare iron. Now if they know the use of iron, so what they did, they simply made axes made of iron, and that made it easier to fell trees. Now they got the land, they started felling the trees or the cutting the trees. Afterward, now that land which they got after cutting or felling the trees was they available for cultivation. They started cultivating different crops, right? Then they use iron plowshares, right? Then they help peasants to produce a variety of crops. Like one crop only we found in early Vedic society, right? Which one crop? That means we found Yava, right? And here we found what? Many varieties of crops, just because of the use of iron. They know the use of iron, right? There were many other occupations as well that was related to the iron, right? Carpenters, then masons, then metal workers, then different crafts started existing, because they know the use of iron. Next, increase agriculture. This way they, after coming to know the use of iron, their axes, the plowshares, this way their agriculture production was started increasing. Clear? Then trade and commerce. With this, their trade and commerce also started increasing, and this way they started coming to towns and cities. They started establishing many towns and cities. So I hope so. If you refer to this society, that means it is an all-rounded society, and plus just because they know the use of iron, so they started cultivating more and more crops. With the crop, their agriculture production got an increment. Actually it increased. They had increased agriculture production. They started cultivating different crops, right? And plus their trade and commerce also started increasing. Plus they started establishing various towns and cities. So if you see in the early Vedic age, they were only comprises of the villages, the small villages known as Vishyas. I already explained you in the previous video. They were only confined to the small villages, but in this society they started developing themselves into towns. They started establishing their areas into towns and cities. So this was the biggest achievement on their part. Clear? Just the way we have Harappan civilization, they were the skilled urban town planners. Clear? They were skilled crafters, right? They simply make crafts, right? So if you see, they were all round developed society. That means Harappan civilization. Afterwards we read about early Vedic society. That was a simple society. They were simple worshippers. They were only confined themselves to the villages. But in later Vedic society, what we see, what we have read, that means we read that know the use of iron. Clear, everyone? And iron, with the help of iron, they know lot many things. Clear? So let's revise again now what we have done in this video. See, now let's move on to the previous slide again. See, now later Vedic age, now this age show the all-round development, right? And here we see the existence of 3 Vedas along with the Rig Veda, right? Yajur, Atharva and Sama. Then each Vedas, they simply divided each Veda into 2 parts, Samhita and Brahmana. Now the Samhita consists of hymns and prayers to be sung at rituals and sacrifices. Then Brahmanas are prose texts that explain in detail the meaning of hymns. Then next we have Aryankas or forest texts, the Upanishads, the philosophical thoughts of learned sages on soul, right? God and ultimate truth or reality, right? So we have seen many literary sources in later Vedic age. Clear? Let's move on to another slide now. Next we have sources reconciled. We have other sources, literary sources as well, like in the form of smriti, they memorizes, right? Then the epics, they different epics has been originated in this age, right? Known as the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Clear. Next we found the archaeological sources as well, where we found the axes made of iron, right? They were familiar with four types of pottery: black and red ware, black slipped ware, painted gray ware, and red ware, right? So though they were also know the use of no ware culture. Ware culture was also established in early Vedic society, but just because they didn't know the use of iron, so they were only confined to that culture, right? Here they have others. We found axes. Clear. Now next, they spread to many new regions. Now earlier we saw what we saw in the previous video, like in early Vedic civilization, the early Vedic Aryans, what they simply established nearby Sindhu region, the seven rivers, right? But here, along with that establishment, they started moving further in all over India. So plus they started establishing their bases in Kurus, modern Delhi, right? Then Kosala, Kashi, Videha, Magadha, Vangas, right? And basically they started, spreading towards the southern part of India, known as Andhra. Right, and Andhra was mentioned in Atriya Atriya Brahmana, it was a type of a Brahmana, and a Brahmana I've already explained you. It explained the meaning of hymns. Clear. Then whole of India, then they established, obviously this is the whole extension. To what extent they established their bases now? They established to the whole of India to the north of Narmada, and then some regions to the south. Clear. Now come on to next slide, the role of iron. Now here, what they know, how they use the role of iron. Basically the very first thing, axes made of iron made it easier to fell trees. Now try to understand. First they simply made axes. Then they started with that axes, they started cutting and felling the trees. Next they got the land that was available for cultivation. Clear, everyone? Then later on they just because of the iron, they started making plowshares or hull, if you remember, right? They started making plowshares, they started plowing the fields. Clear. Then this way they helped peasants to produce a variety of crops. Not one single crop was produced just because of this plowshare. They started cultivating different varieties of crops, right? Then we along with this, we have found different occupation that was linked with the iron. Now with the help of iron, carpenters started originating. Then masons, right? Then metal workers, then different crafts started being establishing in this age. Clear, everyone? Then we have increased agricultural production, and this way, if they know the use of iron, so their agricultural production started increased, right? It started getting increased. Then trade and commerce, right? The trade and commerce also started getting increased. They started moving further from the cities, from their villages, and this way they started forming their villages into towns and cities. Clear. So just because of they know the knowledge of, they know how to implement the iron, how to use the iron tools, right? So they started developing their society. So this was the biggest achievement on the part of later Vedic iron. Clear, everyone? So I hope so people have understood by now what was the society, right? The early Vedic society and the later Vedic society. Clear. And both, what has been originated so far in this both society was the use of the Vedas, was the origination of Vedas. So in the early Vedic society, what we got the Rig Veda. Right, the Rig Veda, which tells us different sources, which gives us the sources, the information about the nature, they worship nature, right? Varuna, Agni, clear, the four orders of the society we got to know from this, clear. And the later Vedic age, we got to know many things. Now we got to know about the other three Vedas, including the Rig Veda, the Athar, Yajur, and Sama Veda. Clear. So I hope so people have understood by now what form society was this, and was quite different from what we did in early Vedic age. They were more developed, right? They developed themselves. Yeah. So do listen to the videos carefully. So I'll be again telling more in depth about later Vedic iron in the next video. Okay, thank you.